TipTut.
Hello everybody and welcome back to TipTut. Today we're continuing with our motion graphics icon series. Now, before we get started, I will say that you can watch these in any order that you want, but I do recommend if you're a beginner, you watch the camera one first because I explain all of the intricacies of basic stuff like moving keyframes, shifting, drawing, squares and shapes and lines and things like that. I explain shortcuts and details that I'm not going to do so much in the rest of these, otherwise they'd all be 45 minutes long, which is crazy. Previously, we've made the camera, the photograph, and now we're moving on to the boat, the fun one, which I like. But let's take a look at what we've made so far. We've got our camera sliding in, looking cool, and our photograph doing the same thing. The next step is to create the boat. These are really simple, really easy to do. You should be able to follow along even if you're a beginner, but if you run into any trouble, let me know and I'll do my best to explain myself in the comments. Let's get started without any further ado. Let's move on. Let's cut off these layers that we've had before so that we don't need either of them anymore. And let's dive right in. Let's grab our simple icons 1 JPEG, which you can get at the description below on my website. And let's create a mask quickly over the boat so that we know what we're working with. Let's grab our rectangle tool and with our icons layer selected, just draw a rough square around the boat. Doesn't have to be perfect. It can be rough. That's fine. Brilliant. Let's press open square bracket to push the start of our layer to where we want it to be. And let's come over to Motion V2 and realign the anchor point to the center. If you don't have this plugin, it's really simple. You can just click the pan behind tool and you can move the anchor point yourself. Let's hit P to bring up the position keyframes and type in 96540, which is the center of a 1920 by 1080 composition, or you can just align it like so. I remember the numbers, so I do it that way. The first step in sort of animating this sort of logo is to draw over the shape in shape layers in After Effects. You could, if you wanted to, import an Illustrator file to shape layers, but doing it manually allows you to think about how that design is constructed and the best ways to animate it to make it look realistic or like it's actually made of the components that you're animating. I'm going to sort of blast through this because we've done it 3 times already, but it's quite a simple process. You grab your pen tool or your shape tool and you just basically trace what you've got. For example, this first wave, I'm going to click here, I'm going to click here and drag, and then I'm going to click here and drag until I roughly copy the shape that I got. Easy peasy. First bit done. I'm going to press open square bracket to align it like so, and I'm going to name it wave 1. Make sure you click off the layer after you've drawn each shape. Otherwise, you'll end up drawing lots of shapes on one layer, and that's useless. What we want is lots of shapes on lots of layers, so that we can animate them all individually with greater ease. For example, we've now got wave 2 drawn as well. You can see where I'm coming from. This is super duper easy peasy lemon squeezy, okay? We're going to grab our boat, and we're going to use the pen tool to trace this wave, like so. However, if we were to let go here and then click here for the next segment, you'll notice that it follows the curve that we've previously set using this line tool. So what you want to do before you click this one, or before you let go of clicking this one, you click and drag to where you want it to be in the right position. Okay, I'm holding shift, but you don't need to. And then before you let go of anything, press Alt. Press and hold Alt. And what that does is that sets, I'm still holding Alt, that sets the previous part of the line so that when I move, I'm only moving the second handle. From there, I can reposition it to be roughly over the line where I want it to be and then let go. Which means when I click up here, it treats this point down the bottom as a linear point rather than a Bezier point. And what that means is it ignores the influence of the previous segment. So we're going to do the same thing here. I've positioned it to where I want it to be. I'm going to hold down Alt. This time I'm going to hold Shift too, and that's going to lock it to 90 degrees, let go of everything. And then when I next click the next point, it's going to be a perfect line with no corner here, which is exactly what we're after. For example, I can click and drag here and position that like so. Then holding Alt, I can push this back to where I need it to be. Nice and simple. That's how you get a really complicated shape. Well, not really complicated, but a complicated shape inside of After Effects looking the way you want it to look. Okay, we'll call this one boat main. and we'll press open square bracket to push it to the start. Let's draw the mast then, nice and easy, like so. That one was good, wasn't it? We like that one. Mast. And let's do the same with these sails here. Let's grab a sail corner, holding shift because I know, oops, maybe it's not 45 degrees. Holding shift because then I know that I get a perfect triangle. We're going to do the same thing. Open square bracket, rename it sail left. And then clicking off that layer, we're going to do the same for this smaller one. Open square bracket, call this one sail right. That's all of our lines, rather, not our lanes, all of our lines done. We just now need to create these colored shapes underneath. The easiest way to do that is to duplicate the shapes that we've already got, okay? So we've got sail right and we've got sail left. So let's duplicate both of those, push them underneath, okay? Let's remove the stroke by alt-clicking the thumbnail until we get a line through it. And then what we can do is click on fill, click on the eyedropper, and just eyedropper our sails here. And then move them into position like so that they overlay the initial JPEG. Perfect. Let's do the exact same thing with the boat underneath. So we've got boat main, we'll duplicate that, we'll push it underneath with control open square bracket. Duplicate is control D, just in case you didn't know. Let's alt click the stroke thumbnail until there's a line through it, and then fill the boat with the green color. Okay, and then put it into position like that. And then to test how well we've done it, we can delete the JPEG underneath and see how much it changes. Not much at all, pretty much perfect. Let's select all of these layers and I'm going to change all of the ends to be round. And what that does is all the ends of the lines just get a nice little round cap on them. I'm using a plugin called Butt Capper, which is hilarious. But if you don't have that, it's really easy. You can just twirl down the contents of your layer until you get to path, until you get to stroke, sorry, and then go to line cap and line join and make them both round, okay? That just gives the ends of the lines a nice rounded end, believe it or not. Perfect, we are ready to start animating. Nice and easy. This one's a fun one to do because you can have things bobbing about because it's on water, which is lovely. First thing we're going to need is our waves to come in, and we can do that with trim pathing. At the start of this video, you probably saw the way the boat was animated. The waves kind of come in, the boat bobs out of the water, then all the sails drop down. It looks pretty cool. It's fun to animate. Let's go to wave 1. Let's go to twirl down, add trim path. Okay. Twirl down trim paths, grab your end keyframe and just drag that all the way down from 100% to 0%. And you can see what that does. It just basically trims the end of the path, which is why it's called trim path, all the way down to 0. Let's keyframe that. And we want to make sure that all our animations are fairly sort of regular in their speed and how long it takes to do things. In the previous episodes, I've been doing sort of 15 or 10 keyframe movements. So for example, control shift and right will move you 10 frames and control right will make you move 1 frame. So that's 15 frames for the first part of the animation. And that goes from start animated all the way up to end. And that means it takes 15 frames to do that. Perfect. Let's grab those keyframes and hit F9 to give them a bit of easing so it looks less boring when it does it. Let's go to our speed graph editor. So if you click the graph editor button here, you should see a little arc that looks like this, which indicates the speed of your animation. You know, slow, very fast, very slow, like so. If you don't see that, it's because you're on the value graph. You would probably see something like this. Just click the second to left icon here and make sure it says speed graph, okay? Zoom in a little bit. Click and drag over both of the points in the graph, which correlate exactly to the points of keyframes here. And then just click and drag on the yellow handle so that it moves from fast to slow. Like so, okay? In fact, that probably moves a little bit too fast. So I'm going to drag my second keyframe by selecting it and pressing Alt-Shift right rather than Control-Shift right. And that moves keyframes rather than the playhead. 10 frames over, and then just Alt-Right, 5 frames over until we get a 30-frame animation. Looks good to me. Let's grab both those keyframes, go to the first one, hit Control C, go to our second wave, hit Control V. There's no point working twice if we don't have to. However, I probably don't want them to come in at exactly the same time. It's always nice when there's a little bit of a delay. So I'm going to move along 3 frames to Control right, And I'm going to press open square bracket to push that second wave over a little bit. And for the sake of neatness, I'm going to put it underneath. Like so. Looks good to me. Perfect. Now, the next bit is the fun bit. We can have the boat bobbing up out of the water. Okay, this is really easy and fun to do. Grab your boat main and your boat main 2 layers and make sure that the anchor point is in the top middle, roughly. And then bring up your position keyframes for these. Okay, so we're going to find a point where the line starts to pretty much cover everything that we need. So let's say halfway through. Okay, and then we're going to press P to bring up the position keyframes. We're also probably going to want to scale them a little bit as well. So we'll hit scale. So P, Shift, S brings up position and scale. Let's keyframe both of those. Okay, and then let's go over, say, 15 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keyframe again. And now usually what we did in the previous episode is then go over 10 frames, keyframe again, and have this second frame be the sort of overshoot, okay? So this, we're going to animate so all they're hidden underneath here. This one, they're going to shoot past a little bit where they need to be. And then this one, they're going to rest back in their right position. But because this is kind of supposed to be bobbing out of the water a little bit, it might be nice if we overshoot again, okay? So these come out, overshoot, undershoot, and then settle. So let me just show you what that means. The first thing you're going to want to do is hide these. So we know we're going to want to hide them underneath that wave. To do that, we need to shift their position all the way down and probably scale them down a little bit as well to maybe 90. We could even try 80, to be honest. Oops, that's 800. Yeah, 80 looks all right. On this one, we're going to want to overshoot them a little bit. So let's scale them to, say, 105. Let's shift their position up a little bit, not too much. Maybe that much. This one we know is where we want them to end up. So let's grab these keyframes, move along 10, keyframe again, go back to those and have this undershoot. So it comes back down a little bit and then we'll shift them to maybe 95% scale again. So what we've got now is a little bobbing motion. Okay, like that. Might be best if we actually did these from the bottom. See what that looks like. Yeah, that looks okay. Does that look better from the top? Yeah, that's fine. We can leave it the way it is. Let's add some easing to these. F9 and see what that looks like. Okay, that looks okay. I don't like the scale changes there though. I prefer just position ones. So what I'm actually going to do is grab all the scale keyframes of these last 3 and set them all to 100, which means it's just undersized on that first bob as it rises out of the water. What I'm also going to do is grab all of these and see if I can't tweak the speed to make it look a little bit better. The first one, you probably want it to go fast to slow. And then the second lot, you might want to leave as they are. What I might do is just tweak them a little bit. So it's not 100% influenced, but it is a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. No, they look good as the way they were. All right, perfect. I'm happy with that. Let's just quickly grab these like so and trim them with Alt open square bracket. And then you'll notice that it looks fine apart from we can still see the boat, which is kind of dumb. This is where our mask comes into play. We could add a mask on each individual layer and try and animate them separately, compensating for their position for the position of the shapes. Or we can add a shape layer above it and track map both of them so that you can't see them, okay? And that's probably what I'm going to do because that's the easiest way to do it. I'm going to trace over this first wave. Doesn't have to be perfectly accurate as long as your line is in between the edges of the stroke. And I'm just going to make sure that I've got enough space to cover up that entire boat area, okay? Like that. Just quickly realign that anchor point. Let's press open square bracket to put it to where we start, the start of where we want it. And let's press control open square bracket to push it down until it's the first layer above the main boat. And we'll call this mask. We'll then select our boat main layer and go to alpha inverted matte mask underneath track map. And what that does, it means anywhere that this mask shape isn't, show this boat main shape. So for example, the stroke of this boat is now invisible because it's behind that mask, but when it animates up, it'll start to be visible again, which is exactly what we want. Let's duplicate this mask layer, drag it above the boat main 2, which is the colored part of the boat, and do the same thing like that, okay? Which means that when it's underneath, there's nothing there. and then it starts to come out like that, which is perfect. Looks a little bit weird still because it's above these waves. So let's take all of those layers like so, collapse them, and push them below both of those waves, okay? Press U to bring up all their keyframes again, and you can see, there it comes growing out of the waves. Perfect. Looks really good. I'm happy with that. Let's take a look a bit further away. Perfect. Good, good, good. Now we want the mast to grow out of the boat. We also want it to be attached to the boat. Okay, we don't want it to be floating there and it's animating without it being attached. So let's go all the way past all the animation that we've done. Okay, and then, and only then, link the mask to the boat layer. So grab your pick whip and attach it to the boat. Now, the reason we go past all the animation is because then it's always stuck to the boat. I'll show you what happens if we did it when the boat was still moving. If we go here, the boat's still moving, and then we pick whip our mask to our boat main layer, it pick whips it in that position forever, meaning it'll float as we animate, okay? Which isn't what you want. And that is why you go past all your animation, make sure it's in the position you want it to be in, and then pick whip. And then it sticks to the boat, which is exactly what we want. Because what that means is when that boat first bobs up, we can say after a few frames, we can start trimming the end of this path so that it animates out. Okay, go to our end, keyframe it, move, say, 15 frames along. Let's do more than that. Let's try 30. Keyframe again, go back to that first one and just drag it all the way down to 0. So now when it comes out of the water, it grows with it and bobs with it as well, which is the important thing. Let's F9 those to add a bit of easing to them and do the same thing to the speed graph. Go from fast to slow. Let's look. Happy with that? In fact, let's have it start at the same time as the boat rises out of the water. Yeah, that looks okay, apart from it needs to start on to 3 frames later. Yeah, that looks good. Otherwise, if it doesn't start 3 frames later, you can see it beneath the waves here. But as soon as that boat is past the waves, we can have this layer start. Okay, brilliant. Let's go then to the end of our animation. And this time we're going to pick whip all of our sails to our mast, which means they come out of the waves with the mast, which is perfect. However, because the mast is attached to the boat, it also scales with the boat as well. Not a massive problem because we're not going to see them until the boat stops scaling. But as that boat starts to bob back down, that's when we want these sails to start flicking out like you saw in the beginning. Okay, so we'll go to that keyframe here on the boat main and we'll just put all of our sails to start there. Very important now that you make sure you set the anchor point for these. So we've got both of our right-hand sails. Let's put them next to each other. Okay. We want both of their their anchor points to be in the top left of their shapes, okay? Because that's the way they're going to swing out. And we want the same for the left-hand ones, apart from we want them to be in the top right. Again, I've got the plug-in here, but you can just sort of click and drag and move these around, okay? Using the pan behind tool. For these ones then, we're going to need scale and rotation keyframes for both of them. So let's start with the left hand side. Let's bring up S Shift R for scale and rotation. Okay, we'll keyframe all of them and we're going to have these bob like the boat did. Okay, so 15 frames for the first animation. Keyframe there. Then it needs to overshoot a little bit, so we'll call that 10 frames. Undershoot a little bit, 10 frames. Overshoot a little bit, 10 frames. This might go very slowly, in which case we can tweak that later, but as long as the increments between time are the same, it's going to look just fine, okay? So we first want it to start with a rotation that is sort of underneath a little bit like that. Let's go 30 degrees, and let's start with a scale of 0, okay? That means this is going to be the overshoot, okay? That's going to be undershoot. That's going to be overshoot a little bit, and then that's going to be where we want it to end up, okay? So this first one can be overshooted. Let's rotate this way maybe 20 degrees, and let's scale up. Actually, no, let's leave all the scale like we did the same for the bow. It only scales on the first bit, okay? So in that case, we can probably just get rid of all these keyframes. meaning we can just move back onto that rotation. Let's undershoot this one a little bit less. So that one was what, 20? Yes. Let's do this one 15 the other way. Let's do this one 7 or so this way. Ooh, 7. There we go. And then this one can be finished. Meaning, when we ease these with F9, and we go and do the first one like this, we should get something that looks pretty good. Perfect. And you can see that it moves with the boat. However, this is taking a little bit long to grow for me now, the mask. So I'm just going to move that in, meaning it should be pretty much at the top when our shapes start to grow from it. Okay, perfect. We're happy with that. So let's just duplicate exactly what we've done there, but with the sail on the right-hand side, like so. Scale, shift, rotation, and let's just keyframe them all. Like so. 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 And so. Okie dokie. This one then. We can now copy what we've got underneath, but it'll be reversed, okay? Because it's facing the other way. So -30 would be +30, for example. Once again, I'm a big dummy and forgot that there are no scale keyframes there, so we'll just delete those. And let's overshoot as we want to. -15 becomes +15. Okay. -7 or +7 becomes -7. And then settle becomes settle. Swings out. Now this one has an overshot here. So this one is the overshoot. We did that wrong. This one needs to be -20, which we missed. That one's positive, that one's over. There we go. Perfect. Let's ease those with F9. Go to our speed graph, grab them here and just shift that along. And looks good. Looks really good. Let's have this second sail come out a little bit later than the first sail. Move along 3 frames with control right and then have that animation start. Just gives it a bit more life. Perfect. And let's just quickly check what we did on that first one here. So, we had some wind go by. That's nice and easy to do. We can do some wind quite easily. Let's have the wind come in at the beginning. But let's go to the end so we can tell where the lines are actually going to be. Let's click sort of here-ish. And then draw a nice wavy line. We don't want it on a fill though. We want it instead on a stroke with this green color. Let's have the green color instead of the dark blue. That looks okay. And then let's position it where we want to, making sure we give it round caps. Again, if you wanted to give it round caps, but you don't have this, you can just go down to the stroke and choose line cap around. And we've already been through this before. You add a trim path to it, you trim the path. It's nice and simple. You can see that this kind of motion graphics is very much the same thing done in different ways, okay? Once you've learned it once, that's really all there is to it. You just need to apply your thinking and your knowledge of what the object is in how you want to animate it, okay? So let's just trim that little layer like so and bring it around to the start of the animation. Let's have it be sort of just as the boat starts to come out, because then by the time it crosses the sails, it should be in position. Yeah, that looks good. Apart from I forgot to add the start keyframe onto this one so that the line actually ends, which is quite important, wouldn't you say? Oops, I've done a lot there. What have I done? For some reason, keyframed the offset and the opacity as well, which I didn't need to do. So let's easy ease those, make them go from fast to slow. And then as we did before, just offset this lower end with Alt and right. And then you've got your line dancing across the screen as the wind goes. Let's duplicate that, shift it along maybe 3 frames, and then adjust it so that it looks like there's 2. Which looks good to me. Let's see what we've come up with. Okay, here we go. You ready? Happy with that. That looks lovely. Okay, then let's collapse all of these boat layers like so. Go back here, find the earliest one. Press I to move our playhead to that point, and then select all of our layers, pre-compose. Making sure we move all of the attributes to the new composition. We'll call this one boat. And there we go. It's nice and neat. We've done our boat. It looks good. However, these other ones spin in a cool way. So all we need to do to recreate that is to make sure we pin the movement of like a scale and rotation of a null object to this boat composition layer. So for example, we've got a null object here that is scaled and rotated from 45 degrees and 90% all the way up to 0 degrees and 100%. Okay, so that's easy to do. Control Shift Alt and Y will add a null object. Open square bracket will push it where it is. Control open square bracket will push it underneath the layer. Then you can just add in a rotation and scale keyframe like so. Move along 30 frames, like so. And then on the first one, -45 and 90% scale. Drag over all of them, hit F9 to ease them, and go to your speed graph. And go from fast to slow. Okay, and then you can see, well, you can't see because it's a null object, but you can see it will rotate like so. Okay, and as soon as that object is finished rotating, you go to your boat layer and pick whip to the null. Again, it's important that it's finished its movement, otherwise it'll be counted in it. That looks pretty good to me. Boom, like that. However, you'll notice that this one looks a little bit more animated. That's just because I've put an expression on it that gives it a bit of bounce. It's not necessary, I just like it. And that is called Elastic under Ease and Whiz. So I'm going to select all of my keyframes, go to my Ease and Whiz plugin, Elastic out, all, apply. And all it does is gives it a little bit of extra bounce and overshoot on that animation as it comes in. So you can look at it now. There you go. Happy with that. All right. Let's see what we've done so far then in this series. We've got our camera coming in. We've got our photograph. And we've got our boat, which is a little bit more bubbly and bouncy than the other two. Perfect. Next time, we'll be moving on to the surfboard, which is quite a good one because it involves things like masks and shapes coming in and sort of forming themselves, which is quite cool. However, like I said, you can watch these in any order you want. So if there's any others that are out, feel free to do so and watch those. Until then, have fun animating and creating motion graphics. And I'll see you all next time for the next episode of Motion Graphic Icons.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.